Hello, everyone, and welcome to Canadians with Disabilities and Their Allies. My name is Brent Frain. I'm the host. The show is also known as PWD Allies Podcast. Check it out on your favorite app, wherever you find it best suited for you. Today, I'm going to be talking about basic income with Tom and Alan and Neil, and some of our other panelists might be joining in with us. And Patrick is joining us also. And Patrick, I'm sure basic income would be great in your area, neck of the woods, and all of our panelists will be diving into the basic income. And I welcome anybody to send in your comments. ABA, ask Brent anything regarding basic income, or ask Tom or Patrick or Alan or Neil or myself, and we'll definitely do our best to answer your questions. It's all about lived experience, and I mean, who wouldn't want to have basic income? I mean, a one-stop shop, and get rid of all these other government programs. And I mean, it all gets paid for anyway. Like, and Tom will dive into this on it right away. But I mean, all these programs, it's all paid for in tax dollars, and it's just a redistribution of income. And why should the wealthy, the top billionaires, millionaires, not pay their fair share of taxes? So I mean, do they need basic income? Well, I guess Tom will dive into that part too. So with all being said, I'm going to get the show on the go here. Tom, welcome. And everybody else that's on my panelists here today.
Hey, thank you. Thank you, Brent. I'm basically going to follow the kind of speech that Guy Standing would do. I'll try to make it shorter because we're going to get going. Best thing first is to define what basic income is. The Basic Income Earth Network, which was established back in 1986, establishes the basic income as a periodic cash payment unconditionally delivered to all on an individual basis without means test or work requirement. In Canada, we focus more on the guaranteed income. There's kind of the two versions. UBI, which is everyone gets the payment up front, and then guaranteed income or negative income tax or basic income guarantee, where the clawback is up front and then you get the basic income afterwards. So in like, it's almost like everyone here on a UBI would get the $2,000 or whatever. On a guaranteed income, it basically looks at your income and then goes, okay, well then we'll guarantee you come up to a certain point. And the reasons for basic income start with being ethical, not instrumental, which means there's a reason for it beyond what good it can do, which is that the wealth of any one of us has far more to do with the generations that have come before than anything we do ourselves. And as we allow every form of private inheritance, there should be a form of public inheritance. And the AI situation, I think, makes this statement, which is by Professor Guy Standing of the Basic Income Earth Network, it makes it actually more real, because the reason we're in this situation now with AI is because we've worked so hard to get here. Like, we've all worked ourselves to this place where AI is going to start taking jobs. Now, either we just accept that and everyone has to work more and more and more and more and more, or we go, wait a minute, this is insane. We're literally working our way out of a job here. So we should all be sharing in what we've all built up over decades and centuries. Especially when you look at, if you're an American citizen, it's even more acute, because the internet, of which all this AI is based on, came from public funding. It was actually a military thing. So there's that. Basic income would also enhance freedom, the power to say no, the power to refuse domination. I like what one thing he says, which is it allows a wife to say no to a husband, even if 100 times, 99.9% of the time, he would say yes to whatever it is. It also is better than welfare, because it's almost like I'd rather make sure that somebody has something, they don't need it, than they need it and they don't have it, right? Where it doesn't have, it makes sure that you definitely have this amount. And then if you actually didn't need it, okay, it's fine, but it ensures that there's that floor. It gets rid of all the stigma. It gets rid of all the reporting. It gets rid of all the, you go over with the rest of them over there. All that kind of gross stuff disappears. And it also, like one of the claims against basic income is, oh, people will stop working. But of course, when you have a basic income, you're better off for working because in with welfare, you face high marginal tax rates, and you also face the precarity trap of, let's say you get that job and then the welfare disappears and then something happens to the job. You lose the job, something happens. It's like, oh crap. Now you got to go to the back of the line, which could take ages, could take weeks to get back to the benefits. Well, you're also facing these high cliff rates where it's like for every dollar you lose a dollar or something like that. It's like you'd be an idiot to take that low wage job because you're going to be worse off for doing so. This is a point made by such a communist as Milton Friedman. Milton Friedman is literally one of the reasons some people on the left freak out when you talk about basic income because they go, "Oh, it'll be a neoliberal Trojan horse," and then, but most people in the movement say, no, 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 basic income is not a panacea. It's not the silver bullet to fix all things. It just creates a floor, and then you can put above it what we also need there. Like, for instance, if the CDB wasn't such a disaster, you're going to say put a Canada disability benefit on top of the basic income. So, like I have a friend who lives out in Abbotsford, and she was trying to get on disability, but she has a hidden disability. So it's like disability wouldn't take her, so she was stuck on welfare. Well, with this, then she's at least above the, she's, above the waterline. And then if you, once you get on disability, then you get that additional amount. And we can add, of course, our healthcare and all these other things. People then would say, well, what about the cost? Because the reason why it could be seen as a panacea is, oh, basic income is so expensive. But as Carl Widequist and Scott Santens, two, big names in basic income, and Guy Standing too, have said, most net costs of basic income are about a third what the gross cost is. Like, people say it's like, oh, this is huge. But of course, when you're doing a guaranteed income, it's like one person might get the full amount. One person might get $300. One person might get $700. One person might get $150. Another person might get 2,000 again. So it's not just this many Canadians times 12 months times 2,000. Ooh, look at that big number. It's not, that's, that's kind of that back of the envelope math, which doesn't make any sense. And then when it comes to inflation, another claim that's put out there is that basic income is not new. It's not special spending. It's not new money necessarily put into the system. And in fact, I like to come back to my own experiences, because people have said, "Oh, you're just some academic." Actually, no. I've been working different jobs for 3 decades and being a musician. And and a lot of those jobs, like I'm a janitor right now, but for a long time I was actually working in a lot of coffee shops. And you'd have situations like we had one where I was working in a mall, and it was New Year's, and not New Year's, sorry, Boxing Day. And usually Boxing Day in Mayfair Mall is like insane. Like, it's like New York City inside of Mayfair. So we all we kind of overcompensated. Everyone had to come in. We stocked everything up to the gills. And unfortunately for us, everyone went to either Subway or KFC. So we were just standing there watching the crowds go by. But it points to a good point, which is that when there's a market out there, when there's people with money to spend, you start producing like crazy. And that increases supply, that meets demand. And then actually, like we saw in Alaska, in Madhya Pradesh, the inflation actually can even go down because supply is raised compared to demand. Alaska also brings up a good point, because with the Alaska Permanent Fund, it's kind of a small basic income that we can all kind of look to and point to, because it ticks every box of a UBI. And it's unconditional on a regular basis, kind of the 5 rules. It's like unconditional, regular basis, in cash, individually, universal. Like even in Canada, it's like you have universal accessibility to it. So, and it's kind of funny, they ask one Alaskan, and they asked him, like, what do you think of Alaska Permanent Fund? And he basically talked like me until they asked him, what do you think of basic income? And he goes, no, that's communism. And it's because of the situation with poverty, where it's like, oh, it's a rich to poor transfer. That's what people think. But when you make it for everyone, it's like you bypass all that stuff. And that's why a lot of people, like, an Alex Howlett or Guy or whoever, might say it's not about poverty, but it would help with poverty. The more, it's like, I really like some of the stuff that Commonwealth Canada has been doing, which is kind of some of the same folks that created UBI Works, where it's like, what was it? It was Peter, wasn't Peter Linebell, that's another fellow. Peter Barnes, that's it. Where he talked about you could actually have, there's actually like two movements, UBI and GLBI. You could actually have like a dividend that goes to everyone as the floor, and then have the GLBI on top of that. So the GLBI has less work to do. So there's so many different things. It gets really fascinating the more you dig into it. Like it's history going back to like Bertrand Russell, the beginning of the first wave of basic income in 1917 in the book Proposed Roads to Freedom, where he wrote a certain small payment sufficient for necessaries should be secured for all, whether they work or not, and a larger income as larger as might be warranted by the total amount of commodities produced should be given to those who are willing to engage in some work which the community recognizes as useful. That's
Wow.
yeah. So this thing's got a long pedigree. It's been talked about back and forth for ages, and it's getting. I think it's like we're getting there, but I wish it would speed up. Like there was UBI Works just put out it was on their YouTube. It's a Congress or conversation that happened at PEI on the what's going to be the base. What they're talking about is the basic income demonstration, not pilot. And the idea behind that is it would be like Saskatchewan with healthcare, where you roll this thing out and and then you fix it as you go. Like you're keeping an eye on like, okay, so how's this working? How's that working? And they're in the conversation is sort of opened up between the provincial and federal because the entire province of PEI, their government is like, yes, we want to do this demonstration. The federal government, according to the video, is now like, okay, we're setting up the conversation between the province and federal government to go like, we'll meet you at 50%, you meet us at 50%. And so, but I mean, like it goes back to, I brought this out. This is Pierre Burton from 1968, where he talks about basic income. And in it, he said that our welfare system back then was not built for built for purpose in 1968. And of course, since then we've had the neoliberal movement that's made welfare a shadow of its former self. And that's exactly what happened with disability back in the early 90s. In America, it was Bill Clinton saying we're going to end welfare as we know it. In England, it was universal credit. And so we're actually working on with a shadow of a system that wasn't good enough back then when it was built for a working world that no longer exists. We have the precariat or the gig working economy, and it's like for the flexibility that's required from people, we should put down a level of stability, and the need for that will only increase. I'll pass it to everyone else. Thank you very much.
Yeah, that's the one thing I was going to say about the gig economy,
Yeah,
is that there's always going to be those jobs that are the 6 or 7 figure salaries, right? So
yeah,
there's always going to be those jobs, but the predominant amount of jobs is the gig economy, which are lower salaries. So you
yeah,
have people that are working in restaurants as servers or what have you.
yeah,
And you know those types of jobs now you're not making enough. You're
yeah,
not making enough to sustain yourself. But if you had a floor, as you said, if you had a basic income floor, you could still see that people would want to have some sort of supplemental. They
yeah,
they they would be quite happy,
Mhm.
a lot of people would be quite happy taking a server job at a restaurant to get a little bit extra income.
yeah.
Because
It makes yeah,
it wouldn't be a required thing. It's like it wouldn't be like, oh, I need this job to help
yeah.
me pay the
Yeah,
rent.
it would be an
Um,
optional, it would be an optional, job that the, person could actually maybe go and do if that, if they were able to do that. Yeah, I
Yeah,
guess the other quick question I have for you, Tom, before I move on over to, well, actually, I was going to go over to Patrick, but actually, I'll go to Ellen first after you.
yeah,
Um, Yeah, the other question was your observation about Newfoundland. Apparently, they want to come out with
Right.
a basic income, but the caveat is they want to piggyback it off of the Canada Disability Benefit. As you know, that it
Yeah.
was supposed to go over to 1 million people, then it went down to 600,000 people, and now they say it's only going to go to 25,000 people, which is
Yeah.
not even 40% of the disabled population of Canada. I mean,
And I know you can figure out the math, Tom, but
Yeah.
we'll just restate it here again. You have
Yeah.
25,000 people, right?
Yeah.
And then
Out
you
of
have
1.5 million. Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
you have 25,000 people, and then you have a maximum dollar amount of $2,400 $2,400 a year. So
Yeah.
$2,400 a year times 25,000 equals $60 million. But it was
Yeah.
supposed to be $1 billion investment every year.
Yeah.
So what happened to the other
Oh, it
almost
went to
billion
AI.
dollars?
Well, on the other part too is that it's only going to go to DTC recipients, and it was distinctly mentioned in the committee and in HUMA. And my MP Mike Maurice had the understanding and agreement from them that that would not be part of the accessibility criteria of having to jump through that loophole.
Yeah.
And of course, they did it. The whoever it was, and two of our guests that were actually on, we asked that question, and they believe that it was actually in the Prime Minister's office, finance. So we know where that kind of went down that rabbit hole for sure.
I think Freeland sabotaged the
Yeah.
disability benefit from the get-go.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No,
Yeah,
I'm just want to, there's something I've been talking about like crazy because I learned about it from Guy, which is within the neoliberal movement was what's called the utilitarian frame or the majoritarian frame, which is that you're focusing on, people who are working jobs, blah blah blah. This fabled majority over here, and then ignoring everyone else, and that started the same way. And we need to kind of turn the corner on that and get it to, we value people first. We trust that they'll know what to do, and then like with the floor, when it comes to like the precariat or the gig economy, it makes it so that kind of, oh, what am I going to do becomes, what am I going to do? It becomes like, yeah, maybe, like you can invest in a job that maybe doesn't pay that much, but I want to do this anyway because I'm really interested in it. I mean, there's like when it comes to people not working, like what with my late girlfriend, she was struggling to get back to work before, and it was tragic because before she passed, like just maybe months before, she had this nurse who worked with her named Laureen, who like she was an angel, this woman, and I just wish she'd met her years before because she inspired her and she got her excited and going and stuff like that. And she was like, I want to start working again. I really do. It's just about getting my health in place and all this stuff. And it's like with anybody I've ever met who doesn't work, there's usually like if there's no disability or whatever, there's usually something else going on under the hood. There's always some other reason. It's not, I can't be bothered. People want to improve their lives. This is what we've seen in pilots, like the one that I bang on and on about because I'm actually trying to make my own little script on it, was based on this book. It's Basic Income and Transformational Policy for India. And you saw how like people were given, one of the reasons I wanted to do this show was because Sarath Davala, who is now the chair of the Basic Income Earth Network, was actually a critic when he ran into the idea in the first place. He was like, no, that doesn't work. You've got to do these things and get people to behave the right ways and all this stuff. And then he was kind of like, well, I needed a job, so I became research director on this project. And he saw how it's like we only gave them like the equivalent of like $5, and and after a few months they went back to a village, and like around them it was like every sector had exploded, every sector had like flourished, And it was like, we didn't give them this much. What is happening? And that's what they learned, was the emancipatory value of a basic income is greater than the monetary amount, because people start combining their basic incomes. One person will start a business and they're surrounded by customers. Like, all these little intricate things start happening. Like, this is what they actually missed in the Finland experiment, because they didn't do that. One of the things that drives me crazy about the Finland experiment as well was that they didn't actually, like, you got to do the legwork with a pilot, because you got to make sure that everybody knows what's happening, that you know where they're at the beginning, and you know where they're at the mid, and you know where they're at the end line. But people actually didn't know how a basic income worked when they were in it. They thought it was welfare. So they thought, oh, I can't take that job because my income will be cut down. It's like, oh, it's like,
yeah.
that's the whole point. So that's why some of the job stuff wasn't that amazing, because it's like, well, they thought it was the same.
And that's another part that I'm going to dive in later in the show. Dive into another part regarding the basic income of why would a certain jurisdiction not want to have it. But hold that thought on that one. I think you know where I'm going to go on that one. There was a report that came out. So yeah, I'll touch base on that one in a little bit. I'm going to move it over to Ellen about how would a basic income change your life, Ellen? And then I'm going to repeat that same question over to you, Patrick. First, I'm going to repeat over to you, Ellen. How would a basic income change your life, like right now?
Well, with the fact that rent's going up for everybody, including me, I'm paying, as of next month, I'll be paying $1,300 for a 500 square foot bachelor, which doesn't even give me a room for a table. I literally have to eat my dinner at the kitchen counter, so it gives you an idea of the size I have. I could own a single bed, but what am I going to do if I have company, right? So, let's see. I think it would just put a floor under my feet. I wouldn't have to worry about a part-time job to offset when I'm not able to live on. I don't think unless something really miraculous happens, I don't think I'm going to find a employer that will accommodate my disabilities, as minimal as they may be. Without a job, I don't foresee able to even afford a one-bedroom apartment in my lifetime. So, a basic income, even if it was $1,500 a month, or even $2,000 a month, would be sufficient enough to live on. I could live on $800 to $700 a month without needing family. So that's probably where I'm at.
I don't know if you wanted to share, Ellen, what happened to you. Do you want to or not?
Sure.
Yeah,
okay.
because that might be, I think that's important sometimes to share our experience.
It's going to delay my job hunting. That's for sure.
Yeah. But also too, I mean, it's something that, I don't think gets enough airplay from, the politicians that are supposedly looking after us. They're like, well, you're just disabled, and they don't take into account that shit happens when you have a disability, and go ahead and talk about the shit that happened, Ellen.
Yeah.
I was out on a photo blog because I've been trying to take photos I can use for greeting cards. So I was trying to develop content that I could turn into different postcards and stuff that could be used to sell to tourism. And I was coming off the ferry. Now, when you walk off the ferry, there's a walkway so that you don't get hit by the cars when they start coming off the ferry.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a concrete lip, like a sidewalk lip, about the same height between you and the cars. And I turned at what I thought was the end of the lip to cross before the car started coming off the ferry.
Okay.
And my foot caught on the lip, and I went down with all my camera gear.
Oh no!
So I dislocated my shoulder, mostly because of the backpack weight, and I can barely even use my left hand now. So I was having to sleep for 3 weeks.
Oh,
So I have no idea
Yeah,
how I'm
sorry,
going to feed
Alan.
myself. I have
sorry.
no way to feed myself, and I can't seem to get anyone to come into the house to even do dishes and stuff for me. So I'm in a bit of a pickle. I'm left-handed, and I've
Well, if
had
I was able to
several
come out
people.
there and do your dishes for you, but
I've had several people say that I should go after the city, but it was literally my own fault. I turned it the wrong. I turned too soon,
Well,
and I went down.
you say that, Alan. You say that, Alan. But at the same time, like I said, this is something that the politicians don't realize, that it's not a question of fault really when you have a disability. Like
Yeah.
Yeah,
we are more prone to shit like that happening. Like in my
Mhm.
case, like I fell and I broke my hip. I mean, sure, it can happen to anybody, but
and anytime.
but in my case, like it happens easier. Like all this kind of
Yeah.
shit happens easier when you already have a pre-existing disability. And
Yeah.
and I don't think that gets enough appreciation and attention
Yeah.
from the powers that be. They're like, well, you're just disabled, and it's just like an even, like it's like they don't
Yeah.
account for the
They don't-
hills and
they don't-
valleys. They're just like everybody's just
Oh.
even across the board all the time, and
Yeah,
it's not
they
like
don't-
that
they
at
don't
all.
listen.
They're basically
Alan-
saying, if you're paralyzed from the neck down, it doesn't matter any more than if you're paralyzed from the waist up.
Right.
In that context, right? Like
Yeah.
you could have two working arms and a prosthetic leg, and you would still be treated no better than someone that was in a quadriplegic in a wheelchair. So
Yeah,
yeah,
they don't listen to lived experience stories. I mean, and then someone will phone up their office, their worker if they have one, and they'd say, "Well, this is what happened," and they'll say, "Oh, well, are you looking for work?" Hey, well, yeah, I just dislocated my shoulder. I can't. Oh, can you prove that, or whatever it is? I mean, it's
well,
or-
I can actually prove it because I had to go in an ambulance.
Oh,
My shoulder was so badly dislocated that I couldn't move my arm.
Oh.
They were going to try and cut my backpack off me, and I said, no, don't do that. Just slip it off one side and it'll come off the other. So
Yeah.
It was not that
I-
shit.
yeah.
it was
So
scary.
anyway,
I'm going to move over to Patrick, Ellen, but
Yeah.
thank you so much for sharing that. We'll come back to you.
No, I was just gonna quickly mention before
Okay.
we go over to Patrick. Anybody that's listening on this podcast right now, if anybody's in the Ontario region or knows Ellen and can reach out to him, and you think you can help Ellen in some way, please reach out to either me or Brent or Ellen directly. We got to do what we can, because like I said, it's like you said, Ellen, it's you think it's your fault, but like I said, if you have a disability, it's not really a question of fault. It's just that's the shit that happens when you have a disability, right?
Yes.
They actually, I could go technically after the city. I just don't see any point in doing it at this point. But really, that concrete lip shouldn't have been there. They should have just had a green, because it's yellow. It's yellow along the sides where the ramp. Once the ramp comes down and the ground is level with the ferry, there's a yellow walkway on each side of the 2 lanes for the 3 lanes for the ferry to come into 2. They should not have had that concrete lip there, because so many people, once you're off the ferry and you're on land, you should be able to just cross the way before the cars start, because they give people who aren't in a vehicle 5 minutes ahead of the traffic to come off the ferry. So they were the ferry people were very accommodating. They had to they were, as I was getting helped, they were loading the ferry on with cars before the ambulance came, and one of the people in the ferry stayed behind on land, even though they needed the 2 staff. So I kind of feel bad if I went after the city, because they were really, really super supportive, despite I was in so much pain. And I had all my camera gear with me and everything. So it was an optimal situation, and nothing got left behind. So I kind of feel like I shouldn't go after the city, but at the same time, that concrete lip was about 3 or 4 inches high enough to catch anybody's foot, and it could
Yeah.
have been anybody.
Just
So
wanted to
I don't
get there
know.
because I've had there was one experience I had a long time ago. It sort of involved me, but didn't.
And
Basically,
it was nighttime
I
too. It was
yeah,
nighttime. It was
oh
10
God,
p.m.
yeah, that makes it even worse.
Oh,
Because like
oh.
you could actually like if you do a thing, you might help with making it so like they have a sign there or some kind of thing. I'm not saying you have to, but like I had this experience where unfortunately I was witness to somebody getting killed by a cement truck. I was leaving work first thing in the morning with my head of maintenance at McDonald's. Back when I used to do McDonald's maintenance, we were turning southbound in Victoria, like from Mount Newton McDonald's, turning southbound. The runner was on the northbound side, and he got hit that way. So I kind of had this front row seat to it, unfortunately. And so I ended up actually in court talking about like and the lawyer was trying to say stuff and whatever and explaining it. But I'm not putting myself on it like, "Ooh, I did it," or whatever. But like I was part of this whole thing that happened, and because of that, coming to the law system and coming to before the city and the city going, "Oh yeah, good point." There's now a pedestrian walkway that goes over that. Or Brent, if you've ever gone from to the ferries, you'll see that pedestrian overpass at Mount Newton. That's why that overpass is there from that actually happening. So you might be able to kind of make some noise so that hopefully you also get some money as well. I really hope that happens. I really hope you get help.
Right now, it looks like they're doing a whole bunch of renovations around the ferry. There's some construction going where I don't know whether they're putting a condo where the ferry is, or if they're putting a new waiting area in or something. But they've got a bunch of those temporary concrete dividers all around the area. So half of the ferry loading station is sectioned off. But I didn't get hurt by one of those. I got hurt by a concrete lip that would divide pedestrian walkway from traffic, and it slopes down at the end of where it stops. So it kind of it's supposed to roll down, and I just turned to cross the ferryway in front of the traffic way before the cars started rolling, because they're allowed to get off before the cars before they wave the cars on, and I did not clear that concrete walkway. And I think that might give me a case because it was dark and I couldn't see it. But I don't. I certainly didn't trip. I didn't trip and fall for an opportunity. That's for sure.
No. Nobody wants to go through this for.
It should have been some kind of.
This was not a let's roll over the hood of a car for fun.
It should be like a bright. So it would stand
all of a sudden, I was standing vertical, and the next I was on the ground. But it was that fast.
Oh yeah, and then unfortunately things like that do happen fast. I remember before we go to Patrick, I remember a time where, of course, it was on me, but my peripheral vision it got kind of misjudged, and of course it was on me. I couldn't go after the city. Was it still on technically my property? You know where I live, Tom. So it's actually on my property. They have a walkway over, and we have a co-op housing that was right next door. So it's actually on their property, but then driveways we share their driveway with our place and then our lawn. And there was a vehicle pulling out into our driveway, going a little bit too fast through the driveway. And I thought, okay, well, I'm gonna go, be behind. The person said, no, go ahead, go in front. Like waved me. So I figured, okay, I better go in a hurry because this person's in a hurry. I went a little bit too fast, and the driveway was super wet. We had just had a monsoon, major amount of rain. Well, my foot, I guess, the amount of water, and I literally hydroplaned, and I felt myself like floating across in a hurry. And I thought I was trying to, how it is, where you almost feel like you're falling forward. It's like, okay, turn yourself, Brent. And I kept thinking, turn yourself.
I thought that myself, Brent, because I went down horizontally straight, and I thought if I had just rolled a little to the right, my backpack would have almost protected me from from my shoulder, but because I had my backpack with almost 50 pounds worth of gear,
Oh,
it separated my shoulder.
yeah, and
Yeah.
down I went. I
So-
just did a face plant right down to this boom and smashed the
Oh,
On,
glass.
on the upside, my camera gear doesn't seem to be affected. Gotta love
Oh.
Nikon for that.
Gear came out all right. That's good.
Yeah, that's what I was gonna ask. Is your camera
Yeah.
okay?
I kept asking people, I don't care as long as my camera.
As long as the camera's okay, right? I mean, no.
But I did try it in the hospital. I could only do it one-handed, but when I hit the autofocus button, the lenses seemed to be locking in, so
Hmm.
it doesn't look like. But I had one in my hand because I didn't have a strap for one, and then the other one was on a strap across my shoulder,
Oh.
so it was hanging off to one side. So both of them ended up underneath me, and how they survived, I don't know, but
That's
they seem to
amazing.
be intact.
Wow.
Well, Patrick, how would basic income change your life in a positive way?
Good question. You know, just sorry, before I go on to that, just thinking of Alan, you know, I wouldn't feel too bad about if you do decide to pursue a legal remedy. I mean, there are lawyers that will work on you know, like a percentage basis. And
Yeah, it's
pretty much-
pro bono.
yeah, well, not quite pro bono. They'll take a third. They'll take a third of whatever settlement. So you know, and
I just
they-
don't have money for a lawyer up front. That's the only problem.
they don't charge you up front.
Yeah.
That's how they, you know, Diamond and Diamond is when they advertise a lot. And, you know,
Yeah.
they kind of specialize in this kind of thing. Just thinking of you, I mean, you might need someone to help you with, you know,
Yeah.
day-to-day living, and that's not free, you know.
I mean, you need to
Uh,
eat, right? And if you can't eat, you know, that's a problem.
Yeah.
And I mean,
Help.
you know, anyways, just thinking of you. Hope you can find a remedy that works. And don't feel bad for the city. I mean, that's what insurance is for, right?
Mhm.
And you can bet they're insured up to wazoo. So, you know,
Do they drag it out though? I mean, like there was no head injury, thank goodness.
No,
I did
but
smack my
you-
face up a bit, but
they'll
Injured
settle
yourself.
fast.
it didn't
They'll
have-
settle fast.
Yeah, I mean, you injured yourself, Ellen, and they didn't have obviously the right accessibility, like for things to stand out. I mean, things marked
Like a
up.
handrail, a handrail would make a lot of sense for a divider,
Yeah.
right? Like,
Yeah,
And
Um,
lighting, like if
exactly.
it's really dark there, like it should be lit so that people don't do the exact,
You
yeah,
know what?
realistically, they should have a rail there, and when the rail stops, the lip stops.
Yeah, and
That
Well,
way,
the
when
canary-
when you clear the rail, you cleared the step.
Yeah,
That
I got
definitely.
hurt.
there's a huge
I got
issue there.
I got hurt in the last job I worked at, which was for Pepsi. You know, stocking the shelves with those with the pop, which is when you're moving those skids, they're like 1,500 pounds or 2,000.
Oh yeah,
And they're all manual pallet jacks, right? So it takes a toll on your body. But I
Yeah.
learned from Workplace Safety Insurance Board that they have this law that's the thin skull law. Like they call it thin skull, but basically, way back when, if someone bumped their head and they had a thin skull and they died, you know, they're going to insure them anyways. There's that you can't exclude somebody for it being their, you know, their own weakness to need insurance. So, you know, like this isn't WSIB, but it's kind of in that same vein. It feels like, you know, it's not your fault that you couldn't see, and you know, it was low light conditions. You have visual impairment. You know, there should be a handrail there or something to prevent injury. Like it just seems like it should be that way.
Yeah, you know what?
I don't
You know
know.
what happened to me too.
And the lip is painted the same color as the walkway, so there's
Yeah.
no way to. There's no
But the
way
only-
to have seen.
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
Oh,
I
but
could call in a couple of lawyers and find out what the upfront. I don't think there is any if they think there's a case. You know, most of them will give you a half-hour consultation.
I'll just say too, like even if you don't involve the lawyers, like in my case, it was about 13, 14 years ago. I was in a different scooter. I have a smaller scooter now. I have a little bit bigger scooter, and I was crossing crossing King George Highway in Surrey here, and then I got halfway across, and there's an island in the middle of the highway where there's another push button to get the other way across, right? And as I was coming up on the island, it's a little bit uneven. So my wheel caught and it got stuck.
No.
And so then I was kind of on, because the whole thing, instead of being level when you got to the island, it was all off kilter. It was all like this. It was a weird angle. Like it was all kind of weird. And so I had only two wheels touching, because the whole thing kind of went like that. And then so I went to hit the throttle just a little bit, and it still wouldn't budge. So I hit the throttle a little bit more. Well, that was enough for one of the wheels to catch, and then it threw me back, like completely backwards. So I flipped the scooter completely backwards.
Oh, geez.
And so here I am in the middle of King George Highway, and I'm completely upside down, and I'm just freaking out. Like, luckily I'm by myself. I didn't have my son with me at the time. He was only like 2 or 3. So luckily he wasn't, because a lot of the time he's on me, right? But that time he wasn't. And so all these people were running across, and right away they flipped the scooter back and got me back in the scooter.
Oh, geez.
But I'll tell you, like, the point of the whole story is, like, of course I didn't do it on purpose, but I ended up writing about it. At that time, I was writing blogs instead of doing podcasts. I used to write blogs on my web page, and I just wrote a blog about me flipping my scooter, and I didn't even think anybody was reading it. Like, sometimes you put it out there and it's like only like 3 people are going to read this thing. Well, it turns out that now I've got the brain fart now. She used to be an MLA, and she got her wheelchair wrecked in Air Canada. Who is that? You know what I'm talking about, right? Stephanie Cadeau. Stephanie Cadeau.
Yeah.
Of all people, she saw it.
Oh, wow.
And I had some just like I didn't do any more posting. I just put it out on my normal web page, and somehow she saw it, and then somehow the Surrey road crew, like members of the Surrey road crew, saw it, and like
The engineering department
saw this.
Oh, wow.
And somebody from the engineering department called me on my phone and talked to me at length about it, and said, like where was this, and we're gonna fix all of this, and I swear to you, within 2 or 3 days, the whole the Surrey engineering department, they went out, and within 2 or 3 days they fixed the entire corridor of the highway there. It was all like I remember driving down there in a friend's car afterwards, and you could see it was all like all these spots. You could see they had them all leveled, and I was like, I did that, because I flipped, right? And I kept saying, I was the one that did that. I was the one that did that. But it was amazing. I was like so impressed, and the idea that they just phoned me right away, and they like wanted to get all the information, and the idea that Stephanie Cadeau, of all people, just randomly stumbled across my post. It was just like, what? But yeah, it was wild. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Wow.
It's quite the situation that you had gone through, and I mean, again, I mean, I'm sure like there's so many people that have lived experience stories like of what Alan has gone through.
Well, I mean, last 3 years ago when I was living in Niagara, it took 3 years to settle. I slipped on black ice on a subdivision that had just put the sidewalk in, and they had not put the lights, or they had not put a light, one of the street lights, in place. It was dark, and there were no, because they were new houses. There was no lighting, and there was no sidewalk on the other side, and I slipped on the ice. Now, a law firm that did the thing, but I think I only walked away with $5,000 on that one, on that fall. But I mean, it took 3 years, so I don't know. They were so nice to me. I feel like I'd be a real tool for suing the city. I just like, they were generally, everybody was like, nobody wanted to leave, and you know what I mean, like.
Yeah.
You need somebody to make
the
the
ferry's on the
sandwiches.
schedule, so I can't blame them for having to stick to the schedule, right?
Yeah. I hear you.
Nice to you, so you don't go and sue them.
Yeah, I remember when I was cycling across the country. It's like
But
I was out
that rail, that concrete lip was about, I can't read it was about that high. It was about the same height as if you stepped off a sidewalk onto the road, maybe a little bit higher.
Right.
And
okay.
it was painted the same color as the stainless steel walkway.
Yeah.
So it looked like it was the same piece. That's probably one of the reasons I tripped on it.
Well,
Yeah.
Alan,
Sounds like my visual
a huge
impairment.
accessibility issue there, right? I mean, sure, they can be nice to you. I mean, and that's great, but they have to make sure that things are done properly so that it
I mean,
to anybody else. Sure.
the EMTs made their report.
Yeah.
So there's a hospital document saying that.
There's all sorts of documentation. Yeah, you're good.
Yeah, that's
You're
a good
golden.
thing, and that's something that they can work from that point
And
on.
you need somebody to make you sandwiches right now because you can't do it, right? So I mean, you know, you got to cover your Subway. You know,
it's almost impossible being left-handed. Like, I mean, I got used to my right hand, but I can't even open a jar of applesauce or a can of soup because I can't open it.
This is a livability thing, you know, like it's a quality of life issue.
Yeah.
Or just basic survival, really. I mean, you know,
and I have to eat because I'm diabetic, so
that's why in Sharia law, you know, the Muslim thing, they'll cut off the hand that you eat with, so you have to eat with the hand you wipe your ass with. You know, like you're in that kind of situation right now. You got to do it all with one.
It comes down to like it took me an hour and a half to get dressed yesterday. That was just t-shirts and a short. Like
yeah.
So
man.
Yeah, and
I'm feeling very useless and very frustrated.
And we already know you have critics that are on your ass, Brent, about mutual aid. But I did want Alan to share, and I'm hoping that there are, you know, maybe a couple people that are going to be watching this afterwards. And I realize like most of our
I feel bad because Gail from Twitter has hired me to take pictures of these birds for her business card, and I'm telling her like I'm weeks away before being able to pick up a camera again. I got no feel. I've got feeling in my hand, but it's all pins and needles because I can't. My two outer fingers, these two, I feel like I slept on my hand, right?
Right.
And I'm terrified to pick the camera up and move from one spot to another.
What I was going to say is that, like, I know that there's lots of our audience that are basically in the same boat we are that don't have a lot of money. But I'm just saying, if there are people that are watching that are, you know, better connected than all of we are, and can afford to pitch in a little bit with some mutual aid, or know somebody that can hook Alan up with a temporary carry or whatever, something like that.
Yeah.
Because you and I, Brent, are in BC here, so there's not much we can do. But if somebody's listening or watching and they're in a position to help, and they're in They're in the Ontario area, like Toronto, Kingston area, and you can reach out and help Ellen. But either reach out to me or Brent, or if you know Ellen directly, you can reach out to Ellen directly.
Yeah. And if Ellen, if you want to put your email address out there to them, I mean, or if they know you directly, they
Yeah.
can.
It's very hard for me to text. Like I tried to text someone the other day, and I was able to use audio to text, but for me to try and put my email address into a Twitter post,
it's hard.
like super painful.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But,
We
I
have
can't
MJ.
exactly say at to the thing. It'll spell H.
well,
We
Neil can actually put it onto the show, like your email address.
Yeah.
Like
If you want, I can have your email address in the description if you want.
yeah, if you want.
Yeah.
If you don't want it, that's fine.
Yeah. I don't know how to. I can email it to you on
Or you could
Facebook.
spell it out. You could spell it out to Neil, and then he can just.
Sure. It's ALUN.
Well,
just remember that
just a second though, Alan. Like I don't know.
I can do it after the show.
Yeah, do
Hit
it
me
after the show. Do it after
Sure.
the show because I don't want to out you on the show
Yeah.
necessarily. Yeah. So
see, MJ has jumped in.
Oh, this service is so much fun. Not.
Yeah.
Said no one ever. Yeah, I want my arm in the
apologize
sling.
for being late.
You know, back to the UBI. I got mixed feelings on it. You know, to be quite honest, because I follow very closely what's happening in the States.
We have the same thing.
Well, what happened since they got their cash injections during the pandemic? A lot of economists are blaming that for inflation, like in part, and I think a lot of it is corporate profit taking that caused the inflation situation. But when everybody was cash rich, you know, we didn't really care so much that they were jacking the prices and shrinking what they gave us. But now we're feeling it a lot more. And I think here with CERB, it was the same. You know, everybody got their $2,000 that wanted it, you know, that qualified, and now they have to pay it back, like me. You know, shit happens. But
yes,
but
I mean, MJ can take this one. I'll have a go at it. Andrew Yang kind of talked about this, where there was so much money, like trillions, that were put into like everything, the kind of American Rescue Plan, and it was like most of it, like Guy said too, most of it went straight into the financial markets. So we bloated the hell out of the finance sector, and people got money as well. So you had a lot of money printed at the same time that supply went. There's a point made by a guy I like to follow. He's not very famous in the basic income movement, which is the director of Mercury Securities, Victor Schvez, who's like he's always on the Macro Voices podcast. And what he said was, what happened during the lockdown and so forth was that we kept incomes buoyant as supply tanked, especially in gas. Like I drive, and you'd see how like back during COVID, there was like gas prices went through the floor because no one was driving. Gas companies went out of business, oil wells were capped, and then we all came roaring back, and the gas companies were like, what? So, and of course everything was based on that. So I think that had a lot to do with it. And then you also have a lot of stuff where, like the corporations there's lots of stuff that's pointing to this. The corporations are taking advantage of the fact that there's this inflation, so they can, it's like the whole thing with that. And I could go into other stuff that runs cover for it, so they can then do that. But like, I have my own opinion on the carbon tax situation, which is that, like, as a driver, like did I see it go up April 1st, for instance? Sure, it went up like 3 cents. Then it went up another 2 cents. Then it went down. It's like there's other stuff going on, and it's a little bit, I just personally think, convenient for Poilievre to go, he did it. And so, meanwhile, his government is like loaded with lobbyists from the grocery sector.
Yeah. See, the problem we have with all the political parties is they've attracted all the players that have, that benefit from that party being in government, right? So they all attract themselves to this. So the level of corruption that we have going on here with all of this, it's not just one party, it's all the parties, right? That's
Yeah,
the
they're all a
real,
bunch of
that's the real
crooks.
problem, right? It's like you take a look at the NDP unions, right?
Yeah.
The Liberal Party, they got their group of people. The Bloc worries about Quebec. The Conservatives, big business, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
They all got their little niche. But you notice in the middle of all that, the people, all the people are completely ignored.
I was gonna just jump in quickly, MJ, and say I think it was Robin Williams that had a joke about that
Yes.
politicians should wear NASCAR jackets with
Yes.
all the sponsorship
Yeah.
shit all over all the
Who
jackets,
owns
and then
you?
you would
Who
know.
owns
I
you?
like the one where
Yeah.
he talks about Ramblin' Joe. No.
Yeah. Well, then,
Well, see that you know, that would be
Yeah.
that'd be the way to do it. You know,
Yeah.
the problem we have here is, you know, when it comes to all these political parties and their solutions, they're always inclusive to the people that are following them, right?
Mm.
But they're exclusive to everyone else,
Yeah.
right?
Mhm.
And the common theme between all of these parties, you know, they all say they claim to care about the disabled, and they all drop the ball.
Or
Every
Yeah.
single one of them,
Yeah.
Yep.
right?
Yeah.
And it's a common theme. It's like, sure, you got your little picks of friends of things that you like, but no one likes the disabled.
Yeah.
And it's something that I've noticed between all the parties. It doesn't matter who they are, whether it's the NDP or the BC Liberals for us, or the Socreds before them, and so on and so on back in history for BC and the rest of the provinces. It's the same thing, right?
I
You know
remember
what I
MJ,
don't.
from the it was during our budget speech in BC. There was a comment that came out. I know I mentioned it before in the podcast before, but there was a comment that came out. And my jaw dropped, and Sonia was watching the same thing because we were watching the budget. Just to see what was going to come out for people with disabilities in BC of this year, right? Of course, nothing in the budget. Everything goes up in cost of living. I mean, go figure. But there was one thing that came out, and the comment was no government wants to deal with poverty. And I was just like, are you kidding me? Like, really? Yeah.
They don't.
I go back. Yeah, I go back to something Cassandra said, because she was talking about the history of the NDP. And they had that, what was it, the Winnipeg Manifesto or something like that. That was like so left it would make Marx blush, right? And it's like, and now the NDP, because of neoliberalism that started with Reagan, they picked it up and ran with it. What was it? The guy that you guys mentioned, what was his name? The premier that we had who talked about the
cheats,
what I'm talking about.
varmints, and deadbeats.
Yeah, that was an NDP. That's a socialist saying that.
Yeah.
So it's like, if they're that pro-corporate, what chance do we have with the rest of them?
Exactly.
It's like, it's not a free market anymore. Finance is like 300%.
You know what's baffling though, Tom, is when you hear the comment coming out of the legislature saying nobody wants to deal with poverty. I mean, then why do they have a poverty reduction?
What left winger would say that?
I was just like, what?
Well,
the part that was astonishing was it came from a minister who's in charge of the finance.
Yeah.
Like the ones holding the purse strings. And meanwhile, the not going to run again.
Allowing poverty to just, like, some people on the hard right want to just like, just get rid of everything, and people will just have charity and that's it. I've literally heard this stuff from Christians, no less, and it's like, okay, having poverty just play itself out is not free.
Exactly.
Painfully so. We went through this before, after the Black Death. That's why, Condorcet and Thomas Paine and these guys were like, we should have something, because otherwise we're basing society in a game of chance, and that's insane.
Or strain on the healthcare system.
Also too, I was going to quickly say is the campaign manager that used to
I'm going to go get refill my coffee, so I'll be right back.
The campaign manager that used to run the provincial NDP here in BC. It was Craig, I think Craig something. Yeah, and he's been on record. He's been on record as saying that the disabled have never been a part of their platform. He's actually going on
Yeah.
record to say
So they're
Yes.
trying to say
the
the silent
disabled
stuff out loud.
have never been a part of their platform, and if that's
Yeah.
the case, then
Maybe it's time we made our own party. I'm
Yeah.
just saying.
Neil,
You know,
I
because like
was watching.
none of you political parties want to include us in your conversation, then
Yeah.
maybe it's time we took a look at this for ourselves. Because
Yeah.
here's the funny thing is the worst thing you want to do is piss off people that can ally even more people around them. And the
Yeah.
disabled people have a bigger reach than a lot of people seem to realize.
Huge
Yeah.
reach, huge reach.
Right? It's like,
Yeah.
Well,
like
you
I'm
can-
disabled,
you can,
that's, I got, the people around me, Brent,
Yeah.
Neil, it's like that snowballs. That's, and it snowballs to family, then friends, and
Yeah.
so on and so on.
They're
So,
Well,
Yeah. Like people know, like
Oh yeah.
right. So
And I
I've
mean-
been wondering about this is, as a disabled person, like maybe all of us disabled people should band together and say, you know what, we're going to do something about this poverty situation. Because
MJ, it's interesting. I just want to quickly comment on that. Is you look at the total population in Canada, and then you say, okay, how many people are disabled in Canada? Well, there's a huge portion. I think there's 27% of the total population has a form of disability. It's either hasn't been diagnosed or whatever, but they have a disability. As we age, we get more disabilities, right? So now
Right.
I would say at least half, or maybe it could be more, of the population are in relation to people with disabilities. So all those people vote.
Well, I walk downtown Kingston, right? And I go down to the water because even if I'm not going to buy any food or even if I'm just grabbing a coffee, I'm seeing probably 16 people in mobile wheelchairs of some sort, either scooters or whatever, on my way. I would say 3 every block.
Wow.
well, and this is the thing, right?
And you're
Is
talking a 6 block radius between me and the water. 6.
well, there you
5 or
go.
6 anyway.
There you go, Alan. I mean, this is where it starts. It's like if we're not included in the NDP's platform or any of the other people's platforms. I mean, I know the BC Conservatives want to figure out a way to put us all back to work because working people make more.
So does Ontario.
Right, and it's like, I work what little I can. It's like mowing the lawn, right? Mowing the lawn puts me out of commission for a week.
Yeah.
That's it. I'm done. Right.
Yeah.
Now I'm on decide to buy a rider mower because, I told her I can't do this anymore. And she's getting too old. So yeah. Now we got a rider mower. Man, it takes me a lot less time. But you know what? It still screws my back up. That's the worst part. Right. People don't think, oh, we can put you back to work. It's like, okay, you're going to put me in a truck, right? With an air ride seat and all the rest of that stuff. My back is still going to be screwed up, right? It's going to get worse. It's like, or whatever the heck it would be, right?
Yeah.
It's like these people that come up with these cockamamie ideas. I like that word, by the way.
Yeah.
It just they come up with these ideas, these political parties, and they figure, well, let's just put all these disabled people back to work. Well, for those of us with physical disabilities, that's one thing. Then there's the people with the mental health disabilities, right? And that becomes right. And it becomes with behavioral challenges and extreme anxiety, being in public or being around people or whatever the problem becomes. So therefore, now you end up excluding these people back again from society from not being involved because they can only take it in small doses. So they're not going to be working. I mean, these people that come up with these ideas, they don't think this stuff through.
Yeah.
They really don't.
The ones who come out with the jobs plan. The best thing for a person is a job.
Yeah, well, I'll take you from that, Brent, because we know Doug Ford, right? The best thing you can do for
I know.
disability is give them a job. But
yeah.
Doug Ford doesn't realize is that Joe, who owns the bakery, has a choice of hiring 5 people. One of them is a disabled person. Is he gonna hire? Who's he gonna hire? Not the disabled person, unless he really wants to look like the good guy.
Oh, exactly.
Unless he can financially, his bakery can absorb the accommodation costs
Well-
of hiring a
Exactly.
disabled person. He's not going to do it.
Yeah,
Because
yeah.
he's already-
Doug
he's already
Ford's, is
Over to you,
done.
Patrick.
Well, you're right, Alan. Like the bakery guy, he's already on a shoestring budget. He can't make that accommodation.
He can hire 3 other guys.
So
Not
he's not going to make
disabled.
that accommodation. He's in it for making money because he's that small. I mean, maybe the large corporations like Walmart and all the rest of those other corporations
Even
can
those
afford,
are like,
can afford to accommodate, but not many of them really want to accommodate.
no, they don't.
No,
Well, it wasn't that long ago that here in
And
BC.
then the Doug Fords will go, "You're disabled. You're not trying hard enough.
Yeah.
It's not my fault you can't find a job."
Yeah, it wasn't
Yeah.
that long ago here in BC that they had sweatshops for the disabled. Remember that?
Oh,
Oh
yeah.
yeah, in the 90s,
Yeah,
$1 an hour.
Yeah,
$1 an hour for
a
packing
dollar an
boxes.
hour, or maybe even less.
Yeah,
it
I worked for
was
somebody who
bad.
literally it was just ridiculous. Like he was working at a company at a
Or-
like like it was like the what was it? The government kind of paid part of it to the employer, so the employer was getting him at a cut rate, and
Yeah,
the boss would like make fun of him. Like it basically like the office was here and his dish pit was there, so he'd just be making fun of him all day, and it was just
Oh.
horrible. And I ran into the guy like a few years ago or whatever, and he's like, "Yeah, the guy that boss got fired." I'm like, "Well done."
I worked
Over to you,
for an
Patrick.
agency called in Port Dalhousie, Ontario, which is St. Catharines.
Yeah.
And they ran the agency ran a laundromat. Now I got paid 10 an hour because I was a supervisor on the off hours, like on the weekends and the evenings. So I was
Yeah.
supervising, but people could on the street could bring their laundry in, and the clients would wash the laundry and fold it, and they were getting $1 an hour.
Yeah.
Oh,
terrible.
Patrick.
It's terrible.
That was the mid '90s.
Yeah, you know what? Just hearing this, and I'm thinking, I don't know if anybody uses Copilot at all. It's the Chat GPT powered
Right.
search engine that Microsoft has come out with. But I asked the question earlier. What are the arguments against universal basic income? And there are a lot of them. But I think they boiled it down to a few. Feasibility is one. And I'm thinking if we want this to move forward, then we got to counter all these arguments.
Yeah. Okay, 1 second.
It boils down to a few. First is feasibility. Primary concern is feasibility that UBI would require a substantial financial commitment. So that's number one. And in this, they're using U.S. figures, and they're saying that in the States it would require about $12,000 per year per person. For what are they, 250, 300 million people down there? So we're talking about a lot of money. Not as much as their defense budget, but that's how it goes. Second is dependency and work incentive. If everybody's getting paid enough to live on, are they going to go to work? And I'm wrestling with this in my own head. Like, am I gonna, if let's say the only job I can reasonably do is as an aide for dementia and Alzheimer's patients in long-term care.
Like a nutrition aid type thing?
No, like wiping asses and putting up with physical abuse. Am I going to do that?
Right.
If I'm getting,
It's a PSW.
Like, is anybody going to do that?
See, and this is why I came up with the idea of of making it optional, right?
Sure.
Right. If you make it optional, this is the problem that I had with it as well. Is okay, feasibly we can't afford it for every person, but what if you don't want it? What if you're making a couple $1 million a year and you don't need it, or you're making $150,000 a year and you think you don't need it, and all the rest of that, fine and dandy, right? If you're making enough money, you don't have to go and take it. You don't have to take it. And I think that's one of the ways we can also save money is, have people that don't want the money to take the money, or rather that don't want the money to take the money. Those that don't, right? you would see
Well-
a definition of people making choices based on what would be best for them.
I think part of the issue that I have is we're picking a fight that is not ours. As disabled people, universal
Is it?
for everybody. No, it's not our problem. We got to worry about what disabled people can get, and
See,
we're not getting enough to live on right now.
See,
That's the bottom line.
the problem is it's all of this stuff is not just affecting us,
Yeah.
right? It's affecting
Sure.
everybody in different ways, like poverty,
Mhm.
right? It's like you got your child tax credit, you got your child support payments that might come in if, it might not come in, right?
Yeah.
So you got all of these things, all of these variables that come into play that
Mhm.
are growing and creating the imbalance towards poverty, right? You've got people that are just starting their life out and they're trying to work part-time, but they can't get ahead. You've got people that are going to school that are trying to work and do their studies and are failing in their studies, and just barely keeping going. I mean, all of these variables come into play when we put in student loans, we put in all these current benefit programs that we currently have, child support payments, spousal support payments. The amount of money that we actually would be saving is absolutely tremendous.
I hear you. I think, it's such an insurmountable problem that by trying to conquer it all, we're not conquering anything.
Well,
You
I think you just answered your own question there, Patrick. Is that I kind of made the point in the last podcast that remember that when the NDP, well, actually you're not in BC, but Brent and I am, and MJ as well. When the
And Tom.
and Tom, sorry, Tom.
That's okay.
Back in 2017, when the BC NDP and the BC Greens did a power share agreement, one of the things that went along with that was that the BC Greens wanted them to roll out a basic income, and they said we don't need a basic income for everybody.
Yeah.
So it's not a question of rolling it out and it has to be 1,000% for everybody, like
Yeah.
right from day one. Their idea for the basic income was, let's have a basic income for one. It was going to be for foster kids aging out of care. That was the one group. The
Yeah.
second group was for spouses, wives that were fleeing domestic abuse. That was the second group. The third group was for disabled. So that was
Mhm.
for the three targeted people, only for disabled,
Right.
for the foster kids, and for abused spouses, abused women,
I think
fleeing violence. And
Right, and
why couldn't they do it just that? Like, who says we have to do everything 1,000% and give it to
Yeah.
everybody all at once?
I mean,
see,
That's
and-
what
like I came
That's
in.
what I'm saying.
Yeah, like I came in. Sorry to cut in for a moment. I came in to this idea after I'd already, it was 2018. I remember I just saw it, and I've been reflecting on how incomes across the board were nothing like they used to be. Jobs were
Yeah.
nothing like they used to be. Supports were
Yeah.
nothing like they used to be. So I remember thinking, we should just take everyone's income and double it. And I didn't realize how right I was, because Robert Reich, the famous American former finance minister, or finance, what do they call him over there? I don't know. In America, but he worked for Clinton, and he quit after the neoliberal thing. But
Yeah.
he said, like, if welfare, if minimum wage, that's it. If at cost of the cost of living, it would be $24 an hour in America. You convert that to Canadian, it's 30. That's how far behind that is, as well
Yeah.
as everything else. And so it's
Wow.
like that's why you see like since 71, that's when we had that decoupling where productivity kept going up and wage
Yeah.
and incomes went like this. And
Yeah.
it's like
Yeah.
something needs to make up that difference in for everyone. And so that's where it's like I come to that. I bring up this book out. This is Guy Standing's book. Now, Guy Standing's a labor economist. He's retired now, trained from Cambridge, taught at the University of Bath, worked with the ILO. In Basic Income and How to Make It Happen, he goes through every single one of the kind of 12 standard objections and he spends a chapter on work disincentives, and he spends a chapter on how to pay for it. So, like the counter arguments, the counter to the counter arguments are out there. And like when it comes to work disincentives, this was the reason Milton Friedman was for it. I mean, Guy is very much on the left, Milton is very much on the right. But as he said, it's like Hugh Segal as well, like one of the longest running advocates for it in
and he
Canada.
didn't think it should be low
Conservative
either.
senator, which
No,
is that when
was
people
a,
get on welfare, we make it entirely impossible for them to get off because we actively discourage work with the way that welfare and disability are set up. You know,
in 2021, Tom, there was a report that came out from BC Poverty Reduction Coalition. And I'm glad Neil had brought up that topic because that's kind of like the segue where I kind of wanted you to kind of look at that is what happened? Like what happened? Why didn't the government go with that? Like, it was going to work.
The NDP didn't want to do basic income. That was the way to do it. They no, it's difficult. I didn't know this until
because
recently.
They realized how many government workers they're going to get rid of, Tom.
Yeah, there's that too. There's been some of that for ages, but also like I have to mention that one of the persons that was on the report is now no longer with us. Rhys Cresselman, he passed away a couple years ago. David Green. Now the funny thing is, David Green was actually on another panel with what's her name, Evelyn Forget and Kim Pate and so forth, talking about Bill S-233, and he actually said when it comes. And now this is a critic of basic income, I believe, possibly on the left, who said, work reduction in basic incomes is usually like 1.6%, and it doesn't really drive inflation that much. And this, again, is an economist who's not even into basic income. But like, what's interesting was I looked up Rhys Cresselman, David Green, Lindsay Tedds, the three economists on it, and they'd written against basic income long before the NDP report was commissioned. So whoever hired them knew what they were getting.
They told them what the report was going to be.
And they're not all from BC either. It's not like, we had to get the BC ones. No, Ted's is from Calgary. So it's like they could have hired Evelyn, 1 for, 1 neutral, 1 against. That would have been fair, but that's not what happened.
Let's look at the Ontario one. I mean,
can I jump in?
Everybody knew we had a winner with that pilot in Ontario. And Doug Ford squashed it because they knew they were going to get good results.
Yeah, Jesse Gollum is a good person.
He wasn't for the people
on this one. Yeah, Jesse Gollum and Humans of Basic Income. She did that thing where she has people holding a sign about what basic income did for them. Humans of Basic Income. You can check that out online. Or just I don't know how I can't remember what her handle is on Twitter, but she was on one called the first one I heard was the Compass podcast called It's Bloody Complicated. In the United Kingdom, they talked to her, and she was just rapid fire talking about all these positive things that happened before Doug Ford. Like Doug Ford promised 3 times that he wouldn't cancel it, and then he canceled it in the first month. And Sheila Regaire,
surprise.
I don't have to tell Ontarians about Doug Ford, but Sheila Regaire was like, Sheila Regaire of the Basic Income Earth Network. She was a retired. And she was a retired government social services employee or worker or whatever you want to call it. And she's like, there is no way that the Ontario government could have ascertained anything about how well the pilot was doing when they canceled it. It was entirely ideological. It was not, we saw it wasn't working and therefore, no, wrong. And they kept changing what their excuse was.
Because in BC, they were
I find it funny that lady Michelle
that pilot project was going, right? And they were actually going to study how Ontario was doing it, and then they pulled the plug on it. But here's something interesting on that little tidbit is I had the former minister on the show from the BC Minister of Poverty Reduction, Shane Simpson. And Neil and I asked him why, what happened with this so-called basic income. And I still remember the time, Neil, maybe you could refresh my memory on this, but I remember him saying that it was only going to go to a certain segment of the population. And he wanted it to go to all because he felt that if they were only going to have it as a small pilot and then take it away, He said it was actually going to hurt more of the population of saying you can have, but you can't have. And I think
one of the
that's
problems, it's like one of the problems right away is like as soon as you make it about this group, well, then it's like, how do you qualify that group? Like I'm a former busker, and there was that whole thing. I don't know where I was going with this, but that whole thing about, okay, so what's a busker and how do you know exactly, whatever. It just becomes too crazy of like people who like have hidden disabilities, or what if somebody missed a thing and now they need it, or what happens like someone who tried, like as Guy said, like, so you're aiming for the poor. Well, if somebody tries to become non-poor, does it change? Like it's just better to create that floor.
It's like having
Well, I mean, we're getting to
Can I
the
jump
point. Sorry, go ahead. Yeah.
It's like when we were talking about earlier about phasing it in on different, different groups. Well, when we phased in UABI or the pilot project that they were talking about for BC, right? Yeah. Well, I was planning on the same idea. Is it was going to be phased in 6 month increments, right? Mm-hmm. And it would be phased in over a period of years, right? That way, instead of you just including every single group right out of the gate, it's like, we start with this group first. Then we're going to move to this group, then to this group. And it's like that way, every 6 months, you just slowly build it up. That way people will have a time to go and say, okay, well, this is what's going to happen. Because the truth is when you get down to it, a UBI in Canada, or UABI, or whatever you want to call it, is going to eliminate at least 2 million government workers. Up to 2 million government workers across 14 government jurisdictions.
Yeah.
It's a privilege to have a job then.
Right. Yeah. We're talking, it's like, in my variation of UABI also includes child support and spousal support. And the reason for that is because of uncertainties, right? The current situation we have is, you miss a month, well, that could put a family out in the street, right? Yeah. If you miss 2 months, they're out in the street, because this is where we have, you have to take a look at everything. And when you take a look at all these people that suggest UBI and say, well, we got to phase it in. Well, which groups are going to be phased in when, right? And this is, let's start with the disabled, right? Let's start with those, that need it,
Well, there's another part too. It was just on the news recently. I'm glad we're talking about basic income or UABI, because there was a huge shakeup in the Chorus network, where there's lots of jobs are going to be shredded, across. Now, what are they going to do? Like their livelihoods, it's like messed up. So like a UABI or basic income would help them. Also, Van City just made the announcement yesterday that 200 employees are going to be losing their jobs.
Well, this is where
I also think with social workers, maybe this is being too flippant or too simplistic, but how many social workers went to school in the first place to become social workers, to police people's income and look under their beds for how many spares and slippers there are? It's like, Alan. No, I don't mean to make an example of you, Alan. I'm sorry if I'm doing that, but
sure.
You're going to be made an example.
But Alan needs care work right now. Imagine if a social worker was, instead of like, how much money you making, all that crap, could be like, this person needs help. Let's go help. Like there's work that needs to be done, and we got 2 million, like you said, millions of people that could do it. Great. All kinds of, it's like, as opposed to work being this thing, it's a job and it's a law and all this stuff. There's like building up the kind of society we want. Like there's so much work that needs to be done. It isn't like one guy said, it's like, working in a factory making plush poop emojis. Like there's so many other more important things to do than that.
Well, exactly.
It's like, here's an example. Okay, so I've been watching a lot of the politics where, and there's such this backlash with this whole thing where Doug Ford's he's not waiting a year, he's putting beer in corner stores and gas bars, and it's going to cost $2 billion to do this. Yeah. And there are MPs going, there's an MP from Kingston who's saying that $2 billion that you're going to waste on putting alcohol and ghost and gas bars and stuff could be using to healthcare. It could be using to disability ODSP.
ODSP.
It could be used to this. And if you just waited a year, till
Yeah.
the contracts were over anyway. You wouldn't be wasting this $2 billion. But the Ford government not only now have decided to take off to October,
Yeah.
but
Shows
they're
you
going
where
to do
their
it. They're going
priorities
faster
are.
ahead. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's about, see, the problem is we have a system that doesn't want to go and help people get better.
Yep.
You know, they don't want to help the people. And
They've proven that.
Well-
exactly. And they pride themselves on that, of not going and wanting to help the people. It's like, when you have the NDP quietly saying, well, the disabled people aren't part of our platform. It's like,
Yeah.
right, when they're saying the quiet things out loud, it makes you think about what else are they not saying. And and it's like, is the platform just to fool us, to make us go and vote for them so they can keep the circle of BS spinning around in the political
That's
sphere?
pretty much.
Because that's what it pretty much
Yeah.
seems like,
Kick
right?
the
Seems
bums out. Okay. No, kick those
Pretty
bums
much.
out.
They're-
I was trying to describe it very politely,
Yeah.
Well,
Well, that's
You know,
that,
way to
that's
sugarcoat
my,
this.
my neighbor
You know.
that is that they had voted for the NDP for many years. They voted for the Liberals, and they went around in a circle, but they finally went back to the NDP, and they basically are very packed up, like they're packing their stuff up.
I think part of the issue was actually described by one of the founding fathers of the U.S. I think it was Thomas Jefferson who wanted there to be no political parties whatsoever. And imagine a world here where we had no parties, and your MPP and MP and MLA, their only job was to represent their people.
we
Yeah.
have an example of that right now, a living example in Canada, Nunavut. Nunavut
Yeah.
does not have political parties. And look at what they're doing, right? If you actually take a closer look, they actually are bringing, the people that are ministers are actually people that are qualified to do the job.
Yeah.
They're not just
Interesting.
the schmucks that get shuffled in and out because you only got so many seats, you have to deal with it, right?
Yeah.
So they're not picking from just one, quote, one party. They're picking from everybody. So if you have somebody that's highly skilled in being, I don't know, medical professional that got elected, wouldn't they be the one you'd want to have in charge of the Ministry of Health instead of some idiot like what we got in BC? I mean, I don't know about you, but I'm just one of these people that, when we take a look at what, and here's the other thing with Nunavut, is they're very lean because they're also small, and an example of that is we could be taking a look at the examples of how lean our government could truly become.
One thing I noticed though, MJ, is that they seem to copy paste each time when a new government gets in, they just hand it over and redact a couple of parts of the script. There you go.
Well,
And redo.
yes, it's like the never-ending train. It's like the conductor changes, right? The conductor changes at the station, and the new conductor gets on and says, "Here's how we're doing things on the train."
Yep, that's
but we haven't gotten off the train.
That's right.
Yeah.
You go from Toronto to New York. I mean, you're on here.
It reminds me of that. It reminds me of that series that was on. Was it Amazon or Netflix? Where they're all stuck on the train in a post-apocalyptic world.
Oh yeah. Snowpiercer.
And
Snowpiercer. Thank you.
And
Yes.
talking about the train, we've come to the end of the show, Brent.
Oh, well, that's. I love how you explain that, MJ, because it's like leaving from Toronto and you're on an Amtrak train and you're going to New York. You're on one train. You get off only at customs, U.S. Customs and Immigration, right? But you're on that train. The only thing that changed was Via Rail employees get off in Niagara Falls, Ontario. U.S. employees, Amtrak employees get on in Niagara Falls, Ontario. You go across the bridge over to U.S. Niagara Falls, get off at customs. Still the same train. They changed the train number though, and then you get back home, same train. Now you've got U.S. employees. So all they're doing is pass it over. They take their product out. They take their product out, and
exactly
their product on. And
you got to remember the parties are just a product. It's you know what, we might as well elect the Maple Leafs or the Canucks to run things because it's the same shit.
Well, I mean,
I like what Yang said about the States. It's even worse, but it's like, imagine you only had two football teams, how much you'd hate the other football team. It's like,
that's exactly what it is. It's also a very good sports analogy. It's like, it's like you watch the playoffs. It's like you watch the season, your team didn't win. So you pick a
Yeah.
new team to cheer for. They get bumped out. You get to pick a new team to cheer for. They get bumped out. And now you're doing this. And this is what we're doing with politics. And, you know,
except here in Toronto, in Toronto, we'll root for the Leafs no matter what happens. You know, they could be.
I hope when
It
I die,
happens
they
every year.
just carry me so they can let me down one more time.
well, exactly. Same with Vancouver.
Yeah,
Vancouver people, you know. You know, but the point being is maybe that is the solution in Canada, is getting rid of the political parties. And no one in the political sphere would want to do that, because then
It's a business. It's a business.
oh yeah. You know how much money these people are rolling in? I mean, the
Yeah.
PM makes the PM almost makes as much as the US president. I actually think he makes more than US president.
Oh,
He
You know.
does. The president doesn't need the
Here's the
money.
thing. Let's look
Right.
at this. Let's look at the parties as if they were corporations. And
Yeah.
you look at so a prime minister steps down or whatever, and same as a corporation. Like when Target failed in Canada,
Yeah.
they gave the guy what $5 million as, and he was
bonus,
actually
yeah.
the one who was. Yeah, he was like,
$1
"You
million.
suck. Here's $5 million bucks."
And
Like,
they're so interconnected with all these lobbyists and stuff like that. There's that classic about what was her name? Nancy Pelosi. That's it. Where for some reason she's like this amazing investor who just makes hundreds of thousands a year. How does she do it? I don't know. Like it's like
Exactly,
okay,
insider
heavens.
trading.
You just
That's not
didn't-
insider
back
information.
into the
No.
Yeah.
But here's a good analogy, though. It's coming BC election coming up October 19th. It's like, what party is going to want to eliminate poverty? And when they go to town hall meetings, I'm going to ask that question: will you eliminate poverty and bring up to a standard of living? Like, will you do it immediately when you get in? Can I
Well,
have writing, please?
I think the question is, will you
What would you do?
will you
Yeah.
eliminate poverty for the disabled?
Yes.
You know,
Yeah.
not for everybody.
Yeah.
You know,
Same.
it just sucks to be you. We're disabled. You look
Yeah.
after us first, please.
Yeah.
You
well,
know,
we
Well, I
got
mean,
thrown under the
the
bus more times. We have points.
Yeah.
right,
yeah.
and the seniors are also being put under the bus as well.
They are.
Right.
The disabled seniors, they're in our camp, but the other seniors, tough shit.
Well, I mean,
Yeah.
you know, that's the thing, is every senior will become disabled. So let's not throw them
Yeah.
out with the
Well,
bathwater.
once they're disabled, they can get in our tent.
Right.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
this is where, you know, I've been, you know, I circle back and say, you know, what would it take for us to go and say, okay, you guys don't want to listen to the disabled people. What about we're going to go and create our own thing, and then we're going to look at solving all the problems that you guys have created, because we're going to actually meticulously look at all the problems you've created.
Mhm.
Right.
Mhm.
You know, because the problem, you know, one of the things that I've been hearing out there in the ether from a lot of people is there's a lot of people out there that aren't working. And the reason they're not working is they don't see a future.
Mhm. Mhm.
And the reason why they don't see a future is because the governments have made it more difficult for them to go and get ahead. For example, graduated driver's licensing.
Yeah.
You know, you think it's bad enough for the regular people. When you're disabled, it's even harder.
Yep.
Right? So because they expect you to be perfect at the driving exam, and when you say I have a disability, they don't care. It says, oh, we'll test that afterward. Well, no. Like, you know, my medical record says I have herniated discs. That causes problems for me to hold in the steering wheel, right?
Mhm.
But yet, they don't care. So there's no accommodations for the people that are disabled, even though they say there is. They don't, you know, the system has been made more difficult for disabled people and for people starting their life out at the same time. So if, you know, it used to be the pride and joy of getting your driver's license, getting your own car, your first job, and being able to bomb around and, you know, and all the rest of that stuff.
That's like that line from The Fugitive. The guy that was tailing Harrison Ford. He's like, and Harrison Ford's like, I'm innocent. And he's like, I don't care.
Exactly, right? They don't.
I like at the end where he said, I know you're innocent. I'm glad it's over. I could use the rest.
Yeah.
I thought you didn't
know.
care. I don't. Don't tell me.
Exactly. Don't tell anybody.
With that being said, I would love to have anyone watching the podcast right now or listening later. If you are a person with a disability over 65 plus, I'd love to have you come on to the show and talk about how the system has failed you as a disabled senior. Like, what would you like to see? Basically, all the advocacy groups, ourselves, basically let the government know, our government of the day, whoever may be in government, either provincial or federal, and let them understand that you are a senior, you have a disability. It doesn't go away just because there's a stop sign that says, oh, 65, you lose your disability status. Now you live on OAS, CPP, GIS, or whatever it may be. And then the high cost of living. Like really, I think that needs to, the narrative needs to change. And I'd love for us to do a segment coming up. We'll definitely talk a lot on that topic. I welcome people to come on and join the discussion with us on this.
I just wanted to say quickly too, like I'm always, because I'm the producer, I'm always looking at the stats of my YouTube channel. And I have to say that the watch time hours and the amount of views that this channel is getting now is a lot. It's a lot. So I'm really happy about the traction that this all these videos and this what we built. There's a lot of traction now. And if anybody wants to help the traction, they just need to, like, subscribe, comment, like leave a comment, share all that stuff. Yeah.
Exactly. There's hundreds of Facebook groups and places on Twitter to be able to share the program. I mean, sure, sometimes we go off the rails a little bit, sometimes we stay on topic, but hey, that's a part of life. We're disabled. What do you expect from us? You won't just let us be, And Tom,
you got to play us a song on the way out?
Yeah.
All right. First of all, I'm going to thank everyone for joining in. And Tom's going to play it out. If you want to be a sponsor, you love the content that we put out here, you want to join the show, reach out to Neil or myself, and we'll get you set up. Thanks, everyone. And Tom's going to play us out.
I can't hear Tom.
I go out of my head. I just can't get enough. I just can't get enough. All you did to me and everything you said. I just can't get enough. I just can't get enough. I slip inside and we fall in love. And I just can't see get enough. There we go.
There you go.
Good. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, everyone.